Hey everybody, Jane here, and I want today to do a spoilery review of the book Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. I read this recently as an audiobook and it was so good. I ended up giving it 5 stars, but I did want to have a discussion about some of the elements and why it was very hard for me to give this book 5 stars because while it gave me all the feels that I want to feel for a 5 star, I was not entirely sure that this book objectively worked. So let's get into it. We have Gwen and Beth, our main characters, and it's an alternating POV between these two girls. They are both in their 20s. I will say sometimes they read a little bit younger, which I do think since this is a Regency romance, we can give them a pass for because women were often treated a little bit younger at that time. So while these girls are 20, I do think they read more like 16, 17. Probably appropriate for the time period. These girls meet at a ball. This is Beth's first season, and her father has recently died. Her mother is running out of money, just has enough money to get her through one season. So Beth has to find a husband this season, or they are going to be destitute out on the streets in very, very bad circumstances. So there's a lot of pressure on Beth that she has to get out there and find a husband this season because the last of their money is going into this season and trying to find her a husband. And hopefully this husband will allow her mother to come live with them because they are absolutely ruined after their father has passed, after her father has passed. So that's Beth. Then we have Gwen. Gwen, this is she's several seasons in. She's not real hardcore about finding a husband. She's very casual about it. She, sure she'd like a husband eventually, but she's a fine with spinsterhood. Like it's not important to her. She hasn't met any guys she likes. She mostly spends the season with her cousins who are gentlemen. She dances with them and hangs out with them, and she's a little bit of a class clown type personality. Lots of hijinks. She definitely is a bit of a tomboy. So with her cousins, she'll pick on them and tease them, and they love her. It's very clear it's a good family dynamic, but she's a little tough on them. Particularly, I think there's one scene where they're uh, playing some kind of sports, and she's more or less being like, "How'd you do that? What's wrong with you? You suck." But like in a loving way. So anyway, Gwen and Beth meet at this ball, and or dance or whatever it is given by members of the Ton, and they become friends pretty quickly. And they realize that their parents knew each other and have were in love at one point or had a relationship or were exes or something. So they say, why don't we try to get our parents together? So I think when I read the back copy of this, it's like the parent trap is kind of the plot. So you have Gwen and Beth who are trying to get their parents together. So they're creating all of these instances during the season for their parents to run into each other and spend time together. And of course, you've got the Ton, so it's a very polite society. So you are kind of limited in how much you can be like, we're just not doing this. And of course, the parents, they do genuinely like each other. We learn pretty quickly, and were each other's like great love, one that got away. And they ended up marrying subsequent people who they didn't like as much, and maybe married those people partly because of the relationship between them falling apart. So we have Gwen and Beth trying to spend the early part of the book just spending time together as they're trying to get their parents together. And I will say I found this part of the book funny but slow because I was here for a romance, and clearly I was aware after reading the back of the book that it's Gwen and Beth who are going to get together, and I was like, there is nothing. There is no, they're besties. Like it is very clear from the get-go that they are going to be besties. And this is more of a I would say, a friends to lovers and a very slow burn. It took a long time, a really long time to get past the, okay, we're spending all this time together as we get our parents together. Oh, wait, I have feelings. Now, I will tell you, it takes a while until the girls at this, for the whole first part of the book, probably the first more than a quarter, probably a third, have no idea that they have any kind of same sex attraction. And I have kind of mixed feelings about that. I mean, it is an era where that would not be something that people would commonly know, maybe, but I just think it's very interesting that both of these girls have no idea that they find girls attractive and are into girls until later. So you just have these two hanging out, being besties, and then you have a scene where Gwen's kind of getting jealous because Beth is pursuing a guy and he is a very good match. He is somebody that her mother is pushing her to marry if she can, like to snag him. And Gwen is getting legitimately upset about it. And everybody just is assuming that she's upset because, you know, she, not that she likes the guy, because she doesn't, but that, her friend's going to get married and she's not, and she's a complete failure when it comes to all this dating stuff. And then her dad, who apparently is a little more perceptive than she is, he arranges for her to notice or to walk in on their housekeepers, who are a lesbian couple, kissing. And Gwen is like, oh, girls can do that. Wait a second. Do I like Beth that way? So then she kind of corners Beth in a hedgerows and kisses her. And they both go, oh, we like girls, which is fine. I feel like there was not maybe as much processing as needed to happen at that point because this is a society where that's so unacceptable. And the girls just kind of go with it. They're like, oh, okay, I like you. And that's crazy. I will say too, and as I already mentioned, the housekeepers and Gwen's dad, there are so many allies in this book. And I think that's wonderful, but I don't think it's real for the time period. Like that was one thing I noticed as I'm reading this is everybody's just okay with these girls being into each other. And, in modern times where we are so much more advanced, there are so many LGBTQIA youth who do not have that kind of support. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be same-sex attracted in that era. I have no idea what, and I assume these girls are bi, maybe. I'm a little unclear about that, if they're bi or if they're lesbian, because up until the point of them being into each other, they've never been interested in other girls. So anyway, then they are just like, it's fine, and everybody around them is all, hey, that's great. You're Gwen, you're into Beth, Beth, you're into Gwen. And I did love that it was supportive. There is a conversation about society as a whole, but we never really see either Beth or Gwen getting pushback from their family or friends about the situation. Of course, the housekeepers are obviously supportive and are great that they have, Gwen has somebody that she can like go to and be like, so, I think I like girls. How do you function that way? Because that's not really what society says. And of course, they have a whole discussion about class and say, hey, you're an upper class lady and what you do is going to be a lot different than what we do. Your dad just lets us live here and share a room and be housekeepers and nobody cares. But it's not easy and most people can't do that. So I did think there were some real good discussions for the time period, but at the same time, I didn't think the girls really get any pushback from anybody around them, because like Gwen's cousins are totally cool with her liking girls. Gwen's cousin's new wife is totally like, hey, I'll help you make secret arrangements so you can see your girlfriend. Because for a while, like the girls are separated, not because they're into each other, but because the guy that Beth is dating, his dad is rivals with Gwen's dad about a bill in Parliament which allowed divorce, which that was there's a lot of really good discussion in this whole book about women's rights, women's place in society, which I think we always see in historical romance, and I love it. And I think it was additional because of the element of, these girls, in order to be together, they can't just marry a different man. They've got to find some way to make it work in this society where all that they are functionally for is to marry and have babies. And how do you manage to be a lesbian or whatever in that capacity? So I thought that was really interesting. But I also felt like everybody just being kind of okay with it was not very accurate historically. And there's a lot of elements in this that I would say are probably not super accurate. And it's kind of rom-com-y, so it doesn't have to be. But like if you're going in for like a period piece, this may not be it. While it also is also having lots of discussions about the time and about, gay rights or lack thereof, and, women's rights and options for women and things like that. Another issue I have with this book, I was assuming because it was so slow burn and because the characters act so young that it was going to be sweet and clean. It is not. There is a bedroom scene. And I don't have a problem with how the bedroom scene was done necessarily, but it threw me a little bit that these girls are Victorian ladies who, are not really educated on their bodies, and certainly not educated on how women get with other women. And they haven't been having fantasies. They've never realized that they like girls up until this point. But once they get into the bedroom, they have no problems figuring things out. And I felt like that really didn't ring true. And I had a lot of questions about that. Like, how do you guys just know what you're doing? There's not even like a discussion of, I don't know what any of this is. We've never done this. I've never done this. How do we do this? There's no questioning the housekeepers, like, so, that thing guys and girls do, how do we do it? None of that. It's just very, oh, I like them and I'm going to clearly do this. And again, I think in the storytelling, it was okay. I just like it stopped me for a minute and went, wait a second. Like I've read other stories from this time period, and generally the girls don't know how to copulate, I guess for better words, in a hetero relationship where, I mean, presumably you've seen Barnyard Animals and how they go at it and the basics. To figure out how two women are going to do it in a time period when two women didn't do it and you didn't even know that was an option until like a chapter ago, I just had some questions about that. So I felt like that was a little bit weird. So anyway, Beth and Gwen decide that they don't care about the husband or the fact that Beth's going to be homeless or any of this, and they end up, deciding that they're going to be together one way or another. And they ultimately get their parents together, and that solves the problem because then Beth's not going to be homeless because her mom's going to be married to Gwen's dad. Now, the thing that I felt like was a little bit of a problem, and it's not going to be a problem for everybody, is that this basically makes Beth and Gwen stepsisters. And again, they were in a relationship before, and not everybody has a problem with the step sibling romance thing. And that's more of like an epilogue problem. But throughout the whole book, I was kind of going like, you do realize if your parents get married like you want them to, you're going to be sisters. And like, again, in Victorian times, they did things different. Maybe step sibling romance was less of a problem. But as a modern reader, I'm also a little bit like, I don't know, guys. This is turning into a stepsister romance. I'm not sure I love that. And that's definitely what happens. Like their parents get married and they're about to have a baby brother on the way, and yeah, or a sister. I guess they don't figure out what it is. They hope it's a boy. That way he can inherit and they don't have the issues they have. But, you know, Beth's mom is married to Gwen's dad, so they have a place to live and they just hang out in a room and say they're siblings. And I didn't love that resolution. It didn't necessarily sit poorly with me. And granted, there's not a lot of options for the time period, but the fact that the only way these characters can be together is to have their parents get together. And then there's also like a discussion in the epilogue of, well, what we can do is basically marry two gay guys. And then we have our relationship with each other, and they have whatever relationships they're going to have. Maybe if they're dating each other, they can have their relationship. And I think that's what the second book is them trying to get two guys together so that they can marry them and, hide their relationship among these two really close friendships. And here's the thing, like, did this happen historically? Absolutely. Is it great in a romance? I don't know. Like, I loved this book and I had a great time with it, and obviously I gave it 5 stars, so I had fun with it. But if I think about it too much, either in the context of history, which it doesn't do a great job of, I don't think, or in the context of the genre of a romance, is this what I expect out of a romance book? That they end up step siblings and are going to try to marry guys so they can pass as straight? Is that how I want this book to end up? And I don't know. It seems like they were not pushing as much in the historical as I felt like maybe we needed to do to have this very accurate ending of, we can't have anything together that is reasonable because we're upper class women. And so the only options we have is to be sisters because our parents got married, and just kind of be spinster sisters here, or to marry some gay men so that we don't have to have babies with them, which also means they don't have heirs, which is a whole nother, problem if you're in the upper class society. But we're gonna marry these guys, not have relations with them. They're not gonna have heirs, and we're just gonna like go to each other's house and swap each other out and just in public be like, hey, here's my husband. And again, is that a reasonable solution for a societal problem? Yes. Does that work for me as a happily ever after in a romance? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Now, to be fair, I haven't read a lot of LGBTQIA historical. I think the only other one I've read was, oh, I don't remember what it's called. A Lady for a Duke, maybe. And in that one, we had a girl who was trans. Her and her best friend had fought at a battle, and she had been presumed killed in the war, had gone home in her true form, and her brother had taken her in because originally she was the heir and going to inherit. And so instead, her brother takes her in, and she lives with her brother, who becomes the heir because her brother is a boy and she's a girl, even though that's not what she was assigned at birth. Um, and then she goes and reconnects with the friend who at the battle they were separated, and eventually tells him, hey, I am who I was, or that's who I'm the same person, but not the same person. And so like I've read that, and obviously they had societal things to deal with, but again, they solved it quite simply by, she was a girl, he was a boy, they got married and they adopted some kids. And that was how that worked for them, and that was fine. I'm not sure that for don't don't want you like a best friend, the ending fully felt good in the way a romance novel ending should. But again, I think it was the appropriate ending for the time period, but they haven't been following so many rules of the time period up to this point. So it was it was a lot of issues I had. I love the discussion. I love the humor. I thought the characters were fun. I'm having some problems with how the historical setting is treated and the plot, and how it works as a romance novel, a historical romance novel. Yeah. So that's kind of my complex thoughts on it. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars because I really enjoyed it, but like I think it has a lot of problems that make it so I could have given it a 4 and felt okay about that too. Like a 4 for what it should be rated versus how much I liked it, if that makes sense. I tend to do 5 stars based on did I like it. Like, did I like it a lot? And if I liked it a lot, I'll give it a 5-star. A 4-star is something typically that I liked but didn't love. This I loved, this I would read again, this I would read more from in the series. But I think if we're looking at it objectively of, is this a good book? Is this a good historical romance? I don't know that I agree that it is. I think it's fun. I think it was a great time. I loved reading it. But I think it has some objectively difficult things that may read or may cause other readers to have issues with it, including just the at the end, the stepsisters relationship thing is a little bit of an ick for a lot of people. I have a little bit of an ick with it. It's not too bad. I mean, they're not really related and they were together before their parents, so what do you want them to do? But, step sibling relationship books is not generally my thing. Again, not a huge ick, but enough that I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure that this is the right solution for this book. All right, guys, have you read this? What did you think? I love the historic romance genre. Are there other historic romance LGBTQIA books you can recommend? Maybe ones that don't have the same issues that I see in this book, even though this book is a lot of fun to read and I had a great time. Leave your comments below. This has been Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye. Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page.